Now, would you welcome Reverend Phyllis for today's message? Thank you, Phyllis.
Thank you, Reverend Bill. And it's lovely to be with you. Now that daylight saving is finished, of course, I'm only going to be able to join you every fortnight, but that's fine. It's nice to be able to join one of or two of the communities here in Australia. So yes, our thoughts are prayers. What are you thinking? And I can almost hear some of you saying, yeah, we've heard all this before. And yes, we have. That is very true. We have heard it all before. And yet I know for myself, I do need to be reminded every now and then of the importance of the kinds of thoughts that I allow to wander aimlessly through my mind. During late January and throughout February, I was privileged to teach the Foundations of Unity. And the two books that we used are two of Unity's classics, Lessons in Truth by Emily Cady and Discover the Power Within You by Eric Butterworth. These are two of the go-to books to learn about the 5 Unity principles. Although these books are not written with these in mind, they certainly cover all the basic principles of Unity's teachings. The third of the principles tells us that human beings create their experiences by the activity of their thinking. Constantly throughout our time together in class and reading the subject matter in the two books, we were reminded of this important fact. If we want our lives to change, we need to take control over our thoughts/feelings, because they do go together. And therefore our actions, and of course, the last of the 5 principles tells us that knowing these things is not enough. We must apply them and apply these truths in our lives. Emily Cady devotes a whole chapter on thinking. And Eric Butterworth wrote in chapter 6, decide the kind of world you want to experience, the kind of friends you want to have, the success you want to achieve, and the kind of conditions you would like to see manifest in your home, your neighbourhood, your office, and begin to think the kind of thoughts that will draw them to you by the irresistible force of consciousness. Then in chapter 8, he writes, with the Gospels of Jesus, there is no escape. The emphasis is upon in every circumstance he deals with, not with abstract commandments or vague religious ideals, but with basic thoughts and feelings. So all of the teachings of Jesus are about our thoughts and feelings. Of course, the way to help us achieve all of this is through prayer and meditation. Whether you sang the song that we just listened to or simply listened to it, the song we heard said, and I hope you did take notice of the words, that every thought is a prayer. Have you ever considered that, really considered that? We are often encouraged to pray without ceasing, and yet this song tells us that we do just that. So if our thoughts create our world, what kind of world are your thoughts creating? Are you aware of the thoughts that wander through your mind unheeded? I know I am not always mindful of the thoughts that I allow to wander through my mind, but if I consider how I feel about a situation, I have a good idea of the kinds of thoughts that have been frequenting my mind around that situation. That doesn't mean I can change the situation. It simply means that my perspective can be changed about that situation. I find it interesting how quickly my world can seemingly change when I change my perspective about whatever is happening around me. And I know that I have the power to change the way I see the situation by simply changing my thinking and feelings, using my ability of faith, willingness, dominion, and love. Do I give myself permission to make those changes quickly? Not always. Sometimes I let myself remain in that state of chaos far longer than I ought and is really necessary, in the hope of learning what the underlying thought about the situation is. Is it an old concept that I'm hanging on to and haven't let go of? Is it a core belief that I have hung on to that no longer serves me? These are things that I can look at if I consider the thoughts that are running through my mind about a situation and my attitude towards that situation. Then I can do whatever is needed to change the way I think once I get to the bottom of the thought that has been limiting my experiences in life. But sometimes I really do bounce back quite quickly to a place of peace and love for life. I often refer to a little yellow card that it says the Unity Way of Life. It's something I've had in my possession since I first joined Unity. Oh, goodness knows how many years ago, about 25, I think it is. It explains that Unity is a way of life, not a form to be followed, a creed to be accepted, not a doctrine to be adhered to. It is an open door to self-discovery. It is the link in the great educational movement inaugurated by Jesus. And the objective is to discover the truth and prove it. Proving the validity of the teachings is something we can do with practice, practice, practice. If we are fair dinkum about creating a life of harmony, peace, and abundance, it takes practice. These things are always available to us. The peace, the harmony, the love, they are always available to us. It is up to us to claim them. Eric Butterworth, in a quote I used earlier, told us that Jesus' teachings are all about basic thoughts and feelings. This all takes a good amount of self-discipline, and sometimes we simply need to set our goals one day at a time. We have entered into a period that is in traditional Christianity referred to as Pentecost. It's a period of 40 days after Easter, and I found that very interesting. I wasn't aware of that. Easter is bookended by 2 periods of 40 days. After all these years, I've only just realised that. Pentecost comes 40 days, as I said, after Jesus' ascension and is the first recorded coming of the Holy Spirit baptism upon his disciples and immediate followers. As you all know, prior to Easter, we had another 40 days called Lent, one of the Christian observances that can help us in our endeavours to make the changes in consciousness. For many, this is a time of prayer and fasting. In Orthodox Christianity, is it a time, as Father Anastasius Ganaris puts it, become a vegetarian. In other words, abstaining from eating meat. Lent is a period when prayer, confession, worship, study, and almsgiving ought to be the focus, is what we're told. Did you know that Buddhism, Islam, Judaism, Taoism, Jainism, Hinduism, as well as Christianity, all practice fasting? I didn't. I knew the Jews fasted and found that fasting for them is predominantly a ritual on holidays as well as observing the Sabbath or Sabbath. Jews will fast from Friday sunset to Saturday sunset, and Yom Kippur is observed in September and also known as the Day of Atonement, and is a 24-hour fast with total abstinence from food and drink. The traditional worshippers spend the entire day in prayer. There seems to be many rules around the ritual, but essentially it seems to be, as the name suggests, a way of atonement with God and to confess sins during that period of time. Reading a few articles about fasting and sensing the many rules, I was reminded of the many rules that were often imposed on the Jews during the period of the scriptures being written. And these are hundreds. There were hundreds of rules as far as I know, which is very different to the simple rules or observances that Jesus set down when he delivered his Sermon on the Mount. They are concise and clearly defined set of attitudes that can truly transform our lives. And there were simply 8. And we can practice them in our daily lives. So a very different approach was what Jesus offered us to what the Jews had been living by and that he grew up with. In Islam, fasting is one of the 5 pillars. There is also a verse in the Quran that prescribes fasting for all Muslims who are mature and healthy enough to do so for a full day. So Muslims fast as an act of worship, a chance to get closer to God, and a way to become more compassionate to those in need. Fasting during the month of Ramadan is as one of the writers put it, the fasting from idolatry. And the writer suggests that to many, food has become an idol. At the end of the month of Ramadan comes a time of feasting, to rejoice at God's friendship and love. When looking at the 3 religions mentioned, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam that I mentioned specifically, their practices relating to fasting seem to have a definite similarity in that it is always a way of getting closer to God. So what about in unity? I mentioned the 5 principles earlier, and when we consider the first one, which says God is everywhere present, and then consider the second one, which tells us that we are spiritual beings and the Spirit of God lives within each one of us, we cannot get much closer to God than that, can we? I'm sure you all know that in unity, we encourage fasting from negative thoughts during the period of Lent. Charles Fillmore wrote, fasting means abstaining from. It is abstinence. The place of overcoming is in the consciousness of man. The 40-day fast prior to Easter is an all-round denial of sense demands. In fasting, we as metaphysicians abstain from error thinking and meditate on spiritual truth, until we incorporate it into the consciousness of one's oneness. Abstain from negative thinking and meditate on spiritual things. During the classes that I mentioned earlier that I facilitated, we were encouraged to learn about the practice of denials and affirmations. These, of course, the great consciousness builders. When we give no power to a negative thought or situation, we withdraw the life and energy from the erroneous thought. And then, using an affirmation, we claim the spiritual idea that we had diminished, lifting ourselves to a higher level of awareness of the truth. Recently, I heard a wonderful example of what this truly means. If we focus our thoughts on an illness or sickness, then we have reduced the spiritual idea of life, wholeness, and health to a very base point, or lack of health and wholeness. The spiritual idea has not changed. It is the manner in which we are using our thoughts and feelings to express that spiritual idea. We, as fully human and fully divine beings, have dominion over our thoughts and feelings in whatever way we choose. Surely focusing on the good is far more beneficial to our health and well-being than focusing on illness. Unless, of course, we want to stay in that state of illness. And I'm sure we don't want to do that. So are there specific times when we need to fast from erroneous thinking, as we're encouraged to before Easter, which we've only just recently celebrated? I think not. When we embrace our divinity, we will know that it is up to us to be aware of our thoughts and feelings. Excuse me. And when we notice a negative thought invade our mind, take away the energy of that thought by giving it no power. Giving it no power. And then affirm the spiritual idea that you want to express. Surely we all want to experience the very best life available to us. And that is why I ask, what are you thinking? Are your thoughts focusing on what is lacking or focused on what you want? You can choose. You always have a choice. I encourage you to choose love, to choose peace, to choose health, wholeness, and abundance, and change your life and change your world. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Reverend Phyllis. We needed that, didn't we? I'll sing that song twice as loud next time. Our thoughts are prayers. You illuminated that song beautifully. Thank you very much. And we look forward to having you back as a guest speaker again sometime soon.